right, here with Mike Renner. Smooth transition here on the PFF NFL podcast. Welcome back, Michael.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
We promised draft talk every week.
Yes, draft talk every week. We're going to go position by position through this summer here because I'm going position by position.
So you're late. Last week we did wide receivers. If you guys didn't catch it, go check out last week's podcast. We talk about how great this receiver class could be.
It will be. I mean, it should be. Barring everyone declaring that would likely declare.
Right. So there's a lot of potential receiver talent. However, what about edge? This is your next. This is the next position you're going through. Is it because it's the deepest? It's because you just love edge rushers.
I think I'm just going through the positions that just get the most people drafted right off the bat. So, wide receiver, edge, cornerback, those are going to have 25 plus guys drafted. So you got to go through a ton of guys to feasibly hit them. So that's where I've been starting. This edge class, I'm not super high on. Kind of reminds me of this past year's linebacking core class, where there's two guys at the top that I feel very good about, and then after that, there might not be another guy I have a first-round grade on at the moment.
All right, so we've discussed these two guys at the top a little bit on multiple episodes now. A.J. Epinesa from Iowa, Chase Young from Ohio State, so a couple Big Ten edge defenders. They're the clear 1 and 2. I mean, these are the guys you talked about in Peter King's article. They're the clear top two guys.
Yeah, I don't think it's very close at this point. Epinesa, we really just need to see him play more snaps. He's yet to play 500 snaps in a season. In his career there at Iowa, was not even really a starter there for the Hawkeyes. So just need to see him play more, but enormous 6'7", in the high 200s in terms of weight-wise, doesn't move like he's a 6'7" high, 280-pound guy, moves more like a 250-pound guy. Already has a handful of pass rushing moves, graded out very well his past year as a true sophomore. Feel great about him. And then Young, led the nation in pressures as a true sophomore. Size, speed, athleticism. These guys tick pretty much all the boxes that you can tick on the edge. So I'm calling them top 10, top 5 type of guys already. I think I feel pretty comfortable about that. I
mentioned last week Chase Young was the guy that kind of stepped onto campus. You saw him play as a true freshman, didn't have a ton of opportunities, but you're just like, all right, when it's his turn at Ohio State, he's going to look great. And last year it was his turn, plus Nick Bosa got hurt, so he had even more opportunities, and he tore it up. Has the burst, has everything you're looking for off the edge. So those two guys from the Big Ten, is there a 3? Is there an order? Do you have an order at this point, or is there just a whole clutter of names?
Number 3, truthfully, I think is actually a small school guy. Boise State's Curtis Weaver, to me, is probably number 3 at this point. He has up there with the size, length profile that you like at the NFL level. Not the athlete that either Epinesa or Young are, I don't think, but already knows how to use his hands extremely well. It was very consistent at Boise State as well. Would like to see him take another, a jump forward here this season. To call him a first-round, a lock type first-round guy, but he has all those sort of traits to be in that in the first-round conversation.
Any of these guys? So what's beyond this? Are we talking about just second-round picks? Or are we talking about?
Yeah, so guys who are just flawed prospects. Now, obviously, we've seen guys take big jumps and go from flawed prospects to more complete prospects. Someone like a Carter Coughlin from Minnesota, very athletic, disappeared against better tackles, does not have the size you want for the position. He looked like he played probably around 240 last year, but has the athleticism, has a nice little inside spin move. He just needs to get bigger. And it's guys like that. So the guys with sort of red flags like that, I'd say put Julian Aguara from Notre Dame in that category of just needs to get bigger, needs to add a bull rush to his repertoire, because I love his length, love his burst off the line of scrimmage, has nice inside and outside move Aguara does from Notre Dame, but just you need to see guys develop that bull rush, develop that sort of, that triple threat ability that I like to talk about, where you can win in a number of different ways. And if you don't have a bull rush at the NFL level, you better be a freak of nature in terms of your athleticism to win consistently still.
Now, last year at this time, I remember we were putting together our lists, and you looked at Brian Burns from Florida State, and then, of course, Shawn Geary from Michigan. And we kind of told the same story from both of them. In the 2017 season, neither guy had incredible production, but we said, look at Burns. I mean, he's got the burst. He's got this, bend. He's got these traits where he could be the guy he's the traits type of guy who could take the next step in 2018. Rashawn Gary is the same thing, right?
Yes.
Could be the traits guy that took the next step in 2018. With Gary, we saw a little bit of a step. With Burns, we saw a massive step? Is there anybody who just fits the proper athletic profile, who's had okay to good production, but could be that next Brian Burns that takes a huge step next year?
I think Yetter Gross-Matos is the guy a lot of people are pumping up as a first rounder because he looks very much the part. He's, I think he's something in the 6'5" range, very long arms, has some highlight reel type of reps on tape, but consistency, taking on blocks. It almost reminds me of actually Montez Sweat in that it just doesn't quite look right. It looks awkward the way he goes about playing the game of football and has not been consistently productive. It did not grade out well for us this past season, but you can see it on the sort of reps on tape. So if you can harness that, the coaching there at Penn State, he's going to get good coaching. He's going to get every opportunity he can to develop, similar to Shawn Geary. So if we don't see it in the next step, well, then I'm going to feel not very confident in drafting him that highly.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. Like, college guys are continuing to they are more likely to get stronger and just improve their athletic profile, so to speak. It's more difficult, I think, to do that at the NFL level as you get older. So we do see guys that break out, I think, more at the college level based off of traits, right? So the same thing that we kind of downplay a little bit when we project guys from college to the NFL, I think they're in this window of potential development in college where the older you get, the harder it is for you to take that big step, right? That's why we're a little bit we sour on a Rashawn Geary type, because it's like, man, you haven't done it at the college level. But if he had done it at, if he had, he's 1 year away from maybe taking that step at the college level and making us feel better about it. There's still some guys that can do that. And
that is the thing that we even doing our 5 years of college grading, haven't actually done this where we're grading guys who haven't even been draft prospects. This is all somewhat new to us. We started doing it some last year, like you said, the Brian Burns or Shawn Geary. We started looking at guys before their final season of college football and projecting for another draft forward.
Right.
But really in the first couple of years of the PFF college, we were only looking at draftable prospects. Then we switched back to the NFL. We didn't necessarily look at guys who were 2 years out from being draftable prospects, 3 years out, like we might be doing right now, like where we are doing right now.
What about Kenny Willekes from Michigan State? I had one of my videos from last year that I posted was him picking up a tight end and basically throwing him into the running back a couple gaps away. I know we don't care about the run game as much, but I just love watching that play. And he was productive as a pass rusher.
No, but he's like opposite end of the spectrum from a Gross-Matos in terms of he might be capped out athletically. He's already knows how to use his hands well. He already plays with good leverage, like that play you just mentioned there. Already doesn't have much in terms of development that he can do. He just is a limited athlete at this point. But, I mean, those guys can still be productive NFL players.
That's probably what we thought about Chase Winovich last year at this time, too. So we'll see what happens with Willekes and, his ability this year. He'll be one of those guys that's a very good college player. And I think for us would need an even more dominant season next year. 86 pass rush grade last season in the Big Ten. The other interesting name to me, Mike Dana, who tore it up at Central Michigan, 91.3 pass rush grade last year. He's transferring to Michigan, and Michigan has really churned out a lot of highly graded, other than Rashawn Geary, a lot of highly graded edge defenders over the last few years since we started doing this in 2014. Can Mike Dana... I love this, college free agency and the idea of transferring and playing right away. It really does give you a chance to say, this guy played in the MAC. He's got one chance to play in the Big Ten. Can he keep up that level of production? Then
will be very interesting because he dominated against the MAC, but then you look at his 3 lowest graded games were against the 3 Power 5 teams he played last year. So when he actually went up against good tackles, those were his lowest graded games. Now he did dominate against lesser competition, and that has value. And if you can continue to do that at the NFL level, that'll still have value. But the fact that he went up against Michigan State, didn't have his best game, went up against Kansas and Kentucky, and those were his 3 lowest, that's just he can obviously solve, sort of make that a non-issue this year if he dominates that Michigan and a Big Ten schedule. But he might not have that same, 90-plus grade that we saw last year.
So there's a lot of names to watch. Jabari Zuniga, another guy from Florida.
I will see. So if we're looking for I have 3 guys on this list that are going to be in the draft guide that I would call breakout candidates. Did not play a ton of snaps last year, but in the snaps they played, showed a lot. Jabari Zuniga, one of them from Florida. Obviously, I think only 300-something snaps this past year. Malik Herring from Georgia, actually watching him and then watching the 2 draftable Georgia guys last year whose names are now escaping me. that I can't think
I
of who
just
actually
lost
the
it,
starters there.
Yeah.
I thought he
I
was
know who you're talking about.
better than them even last year watching their tape. If I was evaluating them all for the same draft, I would be higher on Herring than either of those. Is a guy who's at, I think, about 280 pounds, can play on the edge and then kicked inside a lot for them on third downs, and one from the inside as well. So Malik Herring, if we're looking for a breakout candidate at Georgia, and then Ryan Bowman from Washington. Short but not small, very powerful, very twitchy guy. Only another guy, didn't play a ton of snaps, was not a starter, but I think if he gets that starting snaps this year, you'll see a draft, a high, first few round type prospect.
So you're going to hype them up in the draft guide. What's the plan for the draft guide again?
Draft guide will be dropping sometime in August, sometime before the season.
Right.
And you'll be getting 150 player profiles, background information, all the stuff, grades, advanced stats on those guys, and write-ups, pros, cons lists for all those guys as well.
Love it. We tried it a couple years ago, preseason draft guide. Didn't do it last year. We're bringing it back this year. Mike's going to make it even better from what I'm hearing. Preseason draft guide, some guys to look out for the season. Let me wrap up real quick on this edge thing. For people that are really into the X's and O's of football, there's a lot of people writing about the old tight formation, Mike, the tight defensive formation, the tight defensive front, what I should say. And you're seeing this a lot at the college level where it's just 3 down linemen, and it's just a different game from what you see in the NFL. In the NFL, there's always essentially 2 interior players, and there's 2 guys who are rushing the passer. They are the edge defenders, whereas college has basically said, give me 3 interior players, essentially. They're going to be my 3-man front, and I might have one edge, who could drop into coverage or he could rush the passer, kind of like what Josh Allen did last year at Kentucky, because there's so many 3-man rushes to protect against RPOs, to protect, in the short passing game. Have you seen that help or hurt some of our edge evaluations because you're not seeing the same thing you naturally see at the NFL level?
Now, I think it's been tough because you get just a different type of player playing off the edge. You see so many of these 235-pounders playing off the edge that will never play off the edge in the NFL.
Right.
Or you're never going to play at that position full-time in the NFL at that weight. And so you kind of get stuck in this sort of no man's land of, do we move him off ball, or he shows enough as a pass rusher that we think he could still play there. And that was Joe Schobert a few years ago who we liked, and then it worked out. And there was also guys like Ewan Price who we liked, and it didn't or hasn't worked out yet for the Rams. So I think it is definitely a difficult evaluation. Anytime you're seeing a guy play a role that is not going to be what they're playing at the NFL level,
it just makes you project a little bit more, raises a few more question marks. Anything else you want to add on this edge class?
No, it's kind of weak at the moment. Obviously, like I said, there's guys, if Malik Herring really shows out this next year, it could, change things. But I just think at the moment, really only 2 guys at the top that I feel comfortable calling first rounders even. And usually you get 5 or 6 edge guys drafted in the first round every year. I just think this could be a down year after that top group. I
like looking for those next guys that break out, though. The first guy that comes to mind that we unlocked a little bit was Tack Mckinley at UCLA. His first year that we did this in 2014, he had a ton of pressures on only like 150 snaps. Noted him as a potential breakout. It took him a couple years, and then before you know it, he's a first-round pick. With pass rushers, I think you can glean a lot from those small sample sizes. So there are the opportunities for those guys when they get more reps to really show out. So we could see some improvement here. Let's hold out some optimism for the edge rush class. That'll do it for us this week on the PFF NFL podcast. We'll be back next week. I won't be back next week, so I don't know what's going to happen, actually.
I carry it.
I'm going on vacation. Sam's going to be back. I don't know if you're ready to carry it. You just give. You would probably just read lists.
Yeah.
Right.
I gladly read a list to you guys.
Here's my current draft board.
Yeah.
No explanation, just a list. And
that's how the draft guide was this year.
We'll see. I can't wait to see what you guys do next week. Next week.
I'll let you know.
Sam will be back. You'll allegedly be here. I will not be here. So I'm just it's out of my hands for next week. So somebody will be back next week. PFF NFL podcast. Again, be sure to get to profootballfocus.com. PFF Edge and Elite. If you guys get in now, you'll get that preseason draft guide Mike is talking about. Thanks to everybody that tried the free trial last week. Hope you guys stuck around. And everybody have a great 4th of July, because I won't see you next week. I'll be back in a couple weeks. PFF NFL podcast.